Breaking tonight, new reaction after the U.S. Supreme Court refuses to hear a case in what critics are calling a new blow for religious freedom. Welcome to the Kelly File, everyone. I'm Megyn Kelly. Hours ago, the Supreme Court justices allowing a 2013 New Mexico Supreme Court ruling to stand. That decision, finding that the Christian owners of a photography company do not have the right to refuse to photograph the commitment ceremony of a same-sex couple, even though the photographers argued that they are morally opposed to same-sex marriage. In refusing to hear this case, our next guest argues we may be seeing precedent that stretches far beyond this one state. Tony Perkins is president of the Family Research Council, and a lot of folks had been waiting to see whether the U.S. Supreme Court would take up this case. Today, Tony, they said they would not. That allows this ruling to stand. And you know, by any standard, this is a blow to those like yourself who have been fighting for sort of a religious freedom argument when it comes to discrimination against gays and lesbians, or alleged discrimination against gays and lesbians. How do you see it?
Well, good evening, Megyn. This is not just for those who are Christians. I mean, what we've seen today with the New Mexico High Court's decision standing is that the price of citizenship is to surrender your rights of conscience and religious freedom. That's what, by sidestepping this, the court allowed to stay in place. And, you know, while natural marriage may not be an issue people care about, religious freedom may not even be an issue that people care about. But I would hope that they would care about the issue of the freedom of speech. And that was central to this. It was forced speech, forced expression that the Huguenots were forced to participate in by the leverage of the government.
But the argument that the New Mexico Supreme Court found persuasive and has been now allowed to stand by the U.S. Supreme Court was that the photographers were not going to be forced into speech they didn't agree with, because they could either not offer photography services at all, you know, in the public square, or they could do it at this gay wedding. They could photograph the gay wedding, and yet they could very vocally say, it's not something we agree with. We don't favor gay marriage.
Well, let me ask you this. Would it be right for a church that wants to do a documentary on the scientific evidence that proves that God exists? Would it be fair or right for them to go to a video producer who's an atheist and force them to put together this documentary? Most people would say, no, why would you do that? Well, under the New Mexico ruling, that could happen. Now, I don't think a church would engage in such an antagonistic effort, but that could in fact occur. Look, you don't have to surrender, you should not have to surrender your religious conviction or your rights of conscience to enter into the marketplace. The founders understood that. That's why we have the freedom of religion, religious liberty. It's to be able to order your life and live it according to the teachings of your faith. And in this decision, the court says that the Huguenots would have to be compelled by the rule of law to abandon and compromise their religious beliefs by which they live their lives. That's wrong.
Or abandon their business in the public square.
Well, how do you do that?
But wait, because I want to move on to one other point before I have to let you go. And that is, this is playing out in two arenas. One is the legal arena, and we see that today. But the other is the public arena. And we saw that on Friday with this CEO of Mozilla, who had been elevated to CEO and then basically got forced to resign, Tony, because of a donation he made back in 2008 in support of Proposition 8 in California, which defined marriages between a man and a woman and did not recognize same-sex marriage. It was the same basic position as our president at the time. He's been forced to resign because some folks were so outraged that anybody who made a $1,000 donation, you know, several years ago would be elevated to the position of CEO. Your thoughts on it?
Well, Megyn, this isn't isolated. We've had sportscasters, we've had college professors, we've had those involved with the Olympics, all forced out by this rise of, I think we got to go back to the 1930s to see this type of totalitarianism on the move, where people are saying that, look, you have to comply with this viewpoint on this issue, or you cannot participate in the public arena. You cannot hold public office. They're even saying that you cannot be in business. Look, this should frighten everyone who cares about the bedrock of our democratic republic, and that is the ability to engage in dialogue, discussion, and debate, and make the case. What I think is behind this, Megan, is that those who are advocating this viewpoint, they don't want to debate because the supporting documents, the facts, the reason does not bolster and back up their viewpoint.
Well,
and so
that's
they
certainly
have to
true of
silence
some.
the
I mean, even some gay rights advocates like Andrew Sullivan who came out and said this is no way to behave. You can't force people out of their jobs just because they aren't like-minded to you. Tony, good to see you.
Thanks, Megan.